Bear cub was caught in a high-speed wind tunnel experiment. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning air was crisp and filled with the scent of pine trees when Dr. Zara Winters arrived at the remote aerodynamics research facility. She carried her 8-month-old daughter, Luna, in her arms as they walked through the forest path that led to the laboratory. Luna giggled softly, her tiny fingers reaching out to touch the dewdrops on the leaves they passed. "Just a quick check on the wind tunnel calibration, sweetheart," Zara whispered to Luna, adjusting the baby carrier on her chest. "Then we'll go home and make pancakes." The facility stood like a metal giant among the towering trees, its glass windows reflecting the early morning sunlight. Zara had been working on this project for 3 years, designing the most advanced wind tunnel system ever built. Today was supposed to be a routine maintenance check, nothing more. As they approached the main entrance, Luna suddenly became restless. She started babbling loudly, her small hands pointing toward the thick forest that surrounded the facility. Zara paused, following her daughter's gaze, but saw only shadows dancing between the trees. "What is it, baby?" "Do you see something?" Zara asked, but Luna just continued to babble, her voice carrying an unusual urgency that made Zara's heart skip a beat. Inside the facility, the hum of machinery was barely audible. The wind tunnel system was in standby mode, its massive chambers waiting silently for the next test. Zara placed Luna in a portable playpen she kept in her office, surrounding her with colorful toys and soft blankets. Luna immediately crawled to the edge of the playpen, pressing her face against the mesh wall. She was staring intently at the large window that overlooked the wind tunnel chamber. Her usual happy babbling had been replaced by soft whimpers, as if she sensed something that the adults couldn't. Zara was busy reviewing the system diagnostics when she heard Luna make a sound she had never heard before. It wasn't crying or laughing, but something in between. A sound that made every maternal instinct Zara had suddenly alert. "Luna, what's wrong, sweetie?" Zara rushed to the playpen, but Luna wasn't looking at her. The baby's eyes were fixed on something outside, something that was making her little body tremble with what looked like worry. Zara followed Luna's gaze and looked out the window. At first, she saw nothing unusual. The wind tunnel chamber was empty, just as it should be. But then, in the corner of her eye, she caught a movement near the facility's outer fence. A small brown shape was moving through the underbrush. As it came closer, Zara realized it was a bear cub, probably no more than a few months old. The little cub was sniffing around the facility's perimeter, clearly separated from its mother and looking lost. Luna's whimpering grew louder, and she started reaching toward the window with both hands. It was as if she understood that the baby bear was in trouble, that it needed help. Zara had never seen Luna react this way to anything before. The connection between the two babies seemed immediate and unexplainable. "How did you know?" Zara whispered, watching as the cub wandered dangerously close to the facility's intake vents. These vents were designed to channel air into the wind tunnel system, and while they were covered with protective barriers, they could still be dangerous for small animals. Zara grabbed her phone to call the local wildlife rescue service, but before she could dial, an alarm started blaring throughout the facility. The automated system had been triggered by something, and the massive wind tunnel was beginning its startup sequence. Luna's whimpers turned into full cries now, and she was shaking the sides of her playpen as if trying to escape. Outside, the bear cub had somehow gotten past the outer barriers and was now directly in the path of the wind tunnel's intake system. Zara's blood ran cold as she realized what was about to happen. The wind tunnel was designed to create air speeds of over 200 miles per hour. If that little cub got caught in the airflow, it wouldn't survive. She ran to the control panel, her hands shaking as she tried to override the automated startup. But the system had been locked into its test sequence, and the safety protocols required a minimum of 2 technicians to authorize an emergency shutdown. The other technician, Marcus, was supposed to arrive in an hour. Zara was completely alone with Luna and a rapidly approaching disaster. Outside, the bear cub seemed to sense the danger. It started running in confused circles as the air around it began to move. The intake vents were creating a powerful suction that was pulling leaves, branches, and debris toward the tunnel entrance. Luna's cries became desperate, and she started throwing her toys out of the playpen. One of them, a small stuffed bear, landed near Zara's feet. When Zara picked it up, Luna immediately stopped crying and looked directly into her mother's eyes. In that moment, Zara understood. Her daughter wasn't just upset about the noise or the commotion. Luna had somehow formed a connection with the bear cub, and she was trying to tell her mother to save it. The wind tunnel's roar was getting louder now, and through the window Zara could see the cub being slowly pulled toward the entrance. Its small claws were trying to grip the ground, but the force was too strong. Zara's mind raced through her options. She could try breaking the protocol and forcing an emergency shutdown, but that would take precious minutes she didn't have. She could run outside and try to physically grab the cub, but that would mean leaving Luna alone and potentially putting both herself and the cub in even greater danger. As if sensing her mother's dilemma, Luna did something that took Zara completely by surprise. The baby suddenly stopped crying and pointed directly at a red emergency button on the wall, a button that Zara had never noticed Luna paying attention to before, the emergency environmental control button. It wasn't connected to the wind tunnel system directly, but it controlled the air circulation for the entire facility. If Zara pressed it, it might create enough of a disruption to buy them some time, but using it would also trigger multiple alarms and safety protocols that would take hours to reset. It would ruin months of calibration work and potentially damage equipment worth millions of dollars. Zara looked at Luna, then at the window where the bear cub was fighting for its life. Her daughter's eyes were filled with a wisdom that seemed impossible for someone so young, and in that gaze, Zara saw her answer. She pressed the button. The facility erupted in chaos. Red lights flashed everywhere, and a different alarm started blaring, a high-pitched wailing that cut through the wind tunnel's roar. The environmental control system kicked in immediately, and Zara felt the air pressure in the room change dramatically. Luna stopped crying instantly, as if she knew her mother had made the right choice. She clapped her small hands together and pointed toward the window again, her face lighting up with what looked like hope. Outside, the bear cub felt the change too. The powerful suction from the wind tunnel intake suddenly became erratic, creating pockets of swirling air that gave the little animal a chance to regain its footing. But the wind tunnel itself was still running, still building toward its maximum velocity. Zara ran to the window and watched as the cub stumbled away from the immediate danger zone. But her relief was short-lived. The environmental system disruption had only bought them maybe 30 seconds, and already she could see the intake pressure stabilizing again. "Come on, baby, run," she whispered, pressing her palm against the glass. Luna crawled over to where Zara was standing and pulled herself up on her mother's leg. When Zara looked down, she was stunned to see that Luna was holding something in her tiny fist. A small remote control device that had somehow fallen out of Zara's lab coat pocket. "Luna, no, you can't play with that," Zara started to say, but then she noticed which remote it was. Her breath caught in her throat. It was the emergency maintenance remote for the wind tunnel's secondary systems. How had Luna gotten it? And more importantly, how had she known to grab it? The baby was looking up at her with those impossibly wise eyes again, and slowly, deliberately, Luna pressed one of the buttons on the remote. Immediately, Zara heard a different sound from the wind tunnel chamber. The main intake was still running, but the secondary air circulation system had just activated in reverse mode. Instead of assisting the main airflow, it was now creating a countercurrent that would reduce the overall suction power. "That's impossible," Zara breathed. "The secondary system isn't supposed to work independently like that, and you're just a baby." But Luna wasn't finished. She pressed another button, then another, each time creating a different mechanical response from various parts of the facility. It was as if the 8-month-old understood the complex engineering systems better than some of the technicians who worked there. Through the window, Zara watched the bear cub situation improve dramatically. The conflicting air currents had created a safe zone near the facility's entrance where the little animal could rest and catch its breath. But just as Zara was beginning to feel hopeful, she heard the sound of vehicle doors slamming outside. Through another window, she could see 2 men in dark suits walking toward the facility entrance. They weren't scientists or technicians. These were government officials, and they looked furious. Zara's heart sank. She had completely forgotten that today was the day of the surprise inspection. The military had been considering funding an expansion of the wind tunnel project, and these officials were here to evaluate the facility's safety protocols and security measures. They were about to walk into a disaster scene. "Oh no, Luna, what have we done?" Zara whispered, but her daughter was still focused on the window, still watching the bear cub. The front door of the facility burst open, and angry voices echoed down the hallway. Zara could hear one of the men shouting into a radio about massive system failures and security breaches. Their footsteps were getting closer to her office. Luna suddenly became very quiet and still. She was staring at something new outside, something that made her tiny body tense with what looked like fear. Zara followed her gaze and felt her blood run cold. A massive adult female bear was emerging from the forest, moving with purpose toward the facility. This had to be the cub's mother, and she had finally found her baby. But the mother bear was between the building and her cub, and with all the mechanical noise and flashing lights, she couldn't locate her baby. The large bear was becoming agitated, swinging her massive head back and forth, sniffing the air frantically. The situation had just gotten infinitely more dangerous. The military officials, the trapped cub, the confused mother bear, and a wind tunnel system that was still partially operational despite all of Luna's button pressing. Zara heard the office door behind her rattle. Someone was trying to get in, but it had automatically locked when the environmental emergency system activated. "Dr. Winters, open this door immediately." The voice was cold and authoritative. Luna looked up at her mother, then back at the window. The baby's expression was different now, not just concerned or sad, but determined. She crawled back to her playpen and started pulling out all her toys, arranging them in a specific pattern on the floor. Zara watched in amazement as Luna lined up her stuffed animals: a bear, a dog, a cat, and a small doll that looked remarkably like Luna herself. The baby pushed the bear toward the window, then picked up the doll and made it walk toward the bear. "Are you trying to tell me something?" Zara asked, crouching down beside her daughter. Luna babbled softly and pointed at the toys, then at the window, then at herself. She picked up the small doll again and made it dance in the air, then carefully placed it on top of the stuffed bear. The meaning hit Zara like a lightning bolt. Luna wanted to go outside. She wanted to help the bear cub, and somehow, in her baby mind, she believed she could communicate with the mother bear. It was the most ridiculous idea Zara had ever heard. It was also completely impossible, totally against every safety protocol, and absolutely insane. The door rattled again, more violently this time. "Dr. Winters, we're coming in whether you open this door or not." Outside, the mother bear had moved closer to the building. She was huge, probably weighing close to 300 pounds, and she was clearly becoming more agitated by the second. The cub, sensing its mother's presence, started making small crying sounds that the mother bear couldn't hear over the mechanical noise. Luna crawled to the window and pressed both palms against the glass. She started making a soft humming sound, almost like singing, but not quite. It was a sound Zara had never heard her make before. And then something extraordinary happened. The mother bear stopped moving. She lifted her massive head and turned toward the building, toward the window where Luna was humming. The bear's ears twitched, and she took a few steps closer. Her head tilted as if she was trying to understand something. Luna stopped humming and looked at her mother with eyes that seemed far too old for her tiny face. She pointed at herself, then at the door, then at the window where the bears were. Zara felt torn between protecting her daughter and trusting her daughter. Everything rational in her mind told her to stay inside, wait for help, let the authorities handle this disaster. But something deeper, something that connected her to Luna in a way that went beyond words, was telling her that her baby girl somehow knew something the rest of them didn't. The wind tunnel's roar was finally beginning to fade as the automated system completed its interrupted cycle. But the damage was already done. Alarms were still blaring, systems were malfunctioning, and outside, a mother bear was searching desperately for her lost baby while government officials prepared to break down the office door. Luna looked up at Zara one more time. In that look was a question, a request, and a promise all rolled into one. Zara made her decision. She picked up Luna, grabbed the emergency maintenance remote, and headed for the door, but instead of opening it for the officials who were demanding entry, she activated the fire exit protocol which unlocked the emergency exit at the back of the office. "We're going to do something very brave and very stupid, sweetheart," she whispered to Luna as they slipped out through the emergency exit. "I just hope you know what you're doing." Luna responded by clapping softly and pointing toward the forest where the two bears were waiting, unaware that their unlikely rescue was about to begin. The emergency exit led them into a small courtyard behind the facility, filled with maintenance equipment and emergency generators that were now rumbling to life. Zara's heart was pounding so hard she was sure the bears would hear it from across the clearing. Luna was completely calm in her arms, almost eerily so. The baby kept making those strange humming sounds, and each time she did, Zara noticed small responses from the wildlife around them. Birds stopped chirping. Squirrels froze on tree branches. Even the wind seemed to pause to listen. As they moved carefully around the building toward where the bears were, Zara heard shouting from inside the facility. The officials had clearly broken into her office and discovered they were gone. She could hear them barking orders into radios, calling for backup and search teams. "This is getting worse by the minute," Zara whispered to Luna. "Are you sure about this?" Luna looked directly into her mother's eyes and placed her tiny hand on Zara's cheek. For a moment, the chaos around them seemed to fade away. In that brief contact, Zara felt something she couldn't explain. A sense of certainty, of rightness, as if Luna was somehow communicating directly with her soul. They rounded the corner of the building, and Zara stopped breathing. The mother bear was only 20 feet away, standing between them and her cub. She was even larger up close, her dark brown fur rippling with muscle as she swayed back and forth, testing the air with her nose. The cub was huddled against the building's foundation, no longer in immediate danger from the wind tunnel, but clearly exhausted and frightened. It kept making small whimpering sounds that seemed to frustrate its mother even more. Luna wriggled in Zara's arms, wanting to be put down. When Zara hesitated, Luna started making those humming sounds again, but louder this time. The mother bear's head snapped toward them immediately. Her small, dark eyes focused on Luna with an intensity that made Zara's knees shake. For what felt like an eternity, human mother and bear mother stared at each other across the clearing, each protecting their young, each trying to figure out what the other was going to do. Then Luna did something that made Zara's blood run cold. She started reaching toward the mother bear, opening and closing her tiny fists in the universal baby gesture for "pick me up." "No, Luna, absolutely not," Zara whispered, backing away slowly. But the mother bear was moving closer. Not aggressively, but with a careful, curious gait that Zara had never seen before. The massive animal approached them step by step, her nose working constantly, taking in their scent. Behind them, Zara heard the facility's front door slam open. "Spread out! Find them, and someone call animal control immediately." The mother bear heard it too. Her ears flattened against her head, and a low growl rumbled from her throat. She was now caught between her cub, these strange humans, and a new threat approaching from the other direction. Luna seemed to understand the danger everyone was in. She stopped reaching for the bear and instead started making different sounds, soft, cooing noises that rose and fell like a lullaby, and incredibly, impossibly, the mother bear's growling stopped. Zara watched in amazement as the huge animal sat down on her haunches, tilting her head to listen to Luna's strange song. The bear's eyes, which had been wild with anxiety just moments before, were beginning to look calm, almost peaceful. The cub responded too. It lifted its head and started crawling toward its mother, making small answering sounds that seemed to harmonize with Luna's humming. "What are you doing to them?" Zara whispered to her daughter. Luna looked up at her and smiled, a real, deliberate smile that seemed to say, "Trust me, Mama. I know what I'm doing." The reunion between mother and cub should have been the end of the crisis. But as the two bears nuzzled each other, Zara realized their problems were far from over. She could hear the search teams getting closer, and worse. She could hear the distinctive sound of a helicopter approaching from the distance. The mother bear heard it too. She rose to her feet, gathered her cub close, and looked around frantically for an escape route. But they were surrounded. The facility on one side, dense forest on the other, and humans approaching from all directions. Luna started fussing in Zara's arms, pointing toward the forest and then toward the bears. She was clearly trying to communicate something, but Zara couldn't understand what. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," Zara said, feeling tears start to form in her eyes. "I don't know how to help them get away." That's when Luna did the most extraordinary thing yet. She started making her humming sounds again, but this time they were different, more complex, almost like she was speaking in a language that Zara didn't recognize but somehow still understood. The mother bear responded immediately. She looked directly at Luna, then at Zara, then back at Luna. And then, in a gesture that defied everything Zara thought she knew about wild animals, the mother bear gently nudged her cub toward them. "She wants us to help them escape," Zara realized, hardly believing her own words. But how? Where can they go that's safe? Luna pointed toward the forest again, but this time she was pointing to a specific spot, a dark opening between the trees that Zara had never noticed before. As her eyes adjusted, she realized it wasn't just a gap in the forest. It was the entrance to an old mining tunnel that had been abandoned decades ago. Zara remembered hearing about the tunnel system from the facility's construction team. It ran for miles underground, emerging far away on the other side of the mountain range. If the bears could get inside, They could travel safely away from all the chaos above ground. But there was a problem. The tunnel entrance was on the other side of the clearing, and the search teams were approaching from that direction. There was no way the bears could reach it without being seen. Unless... Zara looked at the emergency maintenance remote still clutched in her hand. She had used it to disrupt the wind tunnel system, but it controlled other things too. Environmental systems, security protocols, and most importantly, the emergency evacuation procedures that would override every electronic system in the facility. "Hold on tight, Luna," she whispered, and pressed a sequence of buttons on the remote. Instantly, every alarm in the facility started blaring at once. Emergency lights blazed to life, illuminating the entire area in pulsing red and white. Sprinkler systems activated, drenching everything in sight. Most crucially, all the facility's doors locked automatically, trapping the search teams inside while the evacuation protocol completed. In the confusion and noise, the mother bear understood her chance. She grabbed her cub gently in her jaws and ran toward the tunnel entrance, her massive form disappearing into the darkness just as the first search team member appeared around the corner of the building. "Where are they? Where did they go?" the man shouted, squinting through the rain from the sprinklers. Zara and Luna were still standing in the shadows, completely soaked but miraculously unnoticed. Luna had stopped humming and was now clapping silently, her face radiant with joy. But their celebration was short-lived. The helicopter was getting closer, and Zara could hear more vehicles arriving. Soon, there would be too many people for them to remain hidden. As if reading her thoughts, Luna pointed toward the tunnel entrance one more time. Then she looked up at Zara with those impossibly wise eyes and babbled something that sounded almost like words. "You want us to follow them?" Zara asked in disbelief. "Into the tunnel?" Luna nodded, like she understood the question perfectly. Zara looked toward the tunnel entrance, then back at the facility where angry voices were demanding someone override the evacuation lockdown. She thought about her career, her research, her reputation. Following the bears into an abandoned mine shaft was probably the most irresponsible thing she could possibly do. Luna reached up and touched her cheek again, and once more, Zara felt that strange sense of certainty wash over her. Maybe being responsible wasn't always the right choice. Maybe sometimes you had to trust in something bigger than logic and protocol. "Okay, baby girl," she whispered. "Let's go on an adventure." They ran across the rain-soaked clearing, their footsteps masked by the chaos behind them. Just as they reached the tunnel entrance, Zara heard a shout. "There! I see them by the old mine." But it was too late. Zara and Luna disappeared into the darkness of the tunnel, following the faint sounds of the bear family somewhere ahead of them. Behind them, the sounds of civilization grew fainter and fainter, until all they could hear was the echo of their own breathing, and the mysterious humming sounds that Luna had started making again. In the darkness ahead, two sets of eyes reflected a brief flash of light. The mother bear and her cub, waiting for their unlikely human companions to catch up. The real adventure was just beginning. The tunnel was completely dark for the first few steps, but as Zara's eyes adjusted, she realized there was a faint light coming from somewhere deep inside. The air was cool and damp, carrying strange smells: old wood, metal, and something else she couldn't identify. Luna had stopped humming and was unusually quiet, but Zara could feel her daughter's tiny body trembling with excitement rather than fear. Every few steps, Luna would point deeper into the tunnel and babble softly, as if she was giving directions. "How do you know where we're going, baby?" Zara whispered, her voice echoing strangely off the stone walls. A few yards ahead, she could hear the soft padding of bear paws, and the occasional snuffle as the mother bear sniffed the air. The cub was making small, contented sounds, apparently happy to be safe and with its mother again. As they walked deeper into the tunnel, Zara began to notice things that didn't make sense. The walls were carved too smoothly for an old mining operation. There were strange symbols etched into the stone, symbols that looked almost like the scribbles Luna made when she played with crayons. More importantly, the further they went, the warmer it got instead of cooler. And that faint light ahead was getting brighter, taking on an unusual blue-green tint that made everything around them seem to glow softly. This isn't just a mining tunnel, Zara realized out loud. Luna clapped her hands and pointed ahead eagerly, as if to say, "Finally, you're starting to understand." They reached a bend in the tunnel, and when they turned the corner, Zara stopped dead in her tracks. The passage opened into a vast underground chamber, easily the size of a cathedral. But what took her breath away wasn't the size. It was what filled the space. Crystals. Thousands of them, growing from the floor, walls and ceiling like a frozen forest. They ranged in size from tiny needles to massive pillars taller than Zara herself. And they were all glowing with that same blue-green light, pulsing gently like massive, slow heartbeats. In the center of the chamber, the mother bear and her cub sat quietly, both staring at the crystals with an expression that looked almost reverential. When Luna made a soft sound, both bears turned to look at them, and Zara could swear she saw intelligence in their eyes that went far beyond normal animal behavior. "What is this place?" Zara breathed. Luna wriggled in her arms, wanting to be put down. When Zara hesitated, Luna started making those humming sounds again. Immediately, the crystals began to pulse faster, their light growing brighter. "Luna, I think maybe we should—" But before Zara could finish her sentence, Luna's humming changed pitch, and something incredible happened. The crystals began to resonate, creating a musical harmony that filled the entire chamber. It was like being inside the world's most beautiful music box, but the music seemed to come from everywhere at once. The mother bear rose to her feet and walked over to them. Instead of being frightened, Zara felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. The bear's eyes were no longer the wild, protective eyes of an animal mother. They were warm, intelligent, and somehow familiar. Luna reached out her small hands toward the bear, still humming her part of the crystal song. And then, to Zara's amazement, the mother bear gently extended one huge paw and let Luna's tiny fingers curl around it. The moment they made contact, the crystals erupted in brilliant light, and suddenly Zara could hear something that made her knees weak with shock. Thoughts. Not her own thoughts, but the thoughts of the mother bear. Clear as if they were being spoken aloud. "Thank you for helping my child." Zara staggered backward, nearly dropping Luna in her surprise. "That's impossible. Bears can't—" "The crystals," the bear's voice continued in her mind, "they allow understanding between all living things. Your daughter can already hear us. She has been hearing us since birth." Luna looked up at her mother and smiled, as if to say, "See? I told you so." "But how is that possible?" Zara asked, not sure if she should speak out loud or think her question. The bear gestured with her massive head toward the crystals around them. "This place has existed for thousands of years, long before your kind built machines above us. The crystals hold the memories and wisdom of all who have touched them. Your daughter's spirit resonates with them naturally." The bear cub tottered over to where Luna and Zara were standing. When it looked up at Luna, Zara heard another voice in her mind, younger, more playful. "Is this my new friend? She sounds pretty when she sings." Luna giggled and reached down to pet the cub's fuzzy head. The moment she touched it, the crystal song grew even more beautiful, and more voices joined the conversation. Zara could hear other animals now, squirrels, birds, even tiny insects, all chattering excitedly about the singing human baby and the return of the old ways. "I don't understand," Zara said, feeling overwhelmed. "Luna is just a normal baby. She can't possibly—" "Normal?" The mother bear's voice in her mind carried what could only be described as gentle amusement. "Your daughter is many things, but normal is not one of them. She is a bridge between worlds, a translator of hearts. That is why she could help us today." As if to demonstrate, Luna started humming again, and this time Zara could understand what she was saying. It wasn't words exactly, but concepts and emotions expressed through sound. Luna was telling the story of what had happened, how she had sensed the cub's danger, guided her mother to help, and brought them all to this magical place. But Luna's story continued beyond what had already happened. She was showing them images of the future, the research facility above, the angry officials, the search that was still going on. "They'll never stop looking for us," Zara realized. "The government officials, my supervisors, they can't let this incident go unreported." The mother bear stood up and walked to one of the larger crystals. When she placed her paw against it, the entire chamber filled with new images. Not Luna's visions of the future, but memories of the past. Zara saw the forest as it had been decades ago, before the research facility was built. She saw other people who had found this crystal chamber, scientists and explorers who had discovered the same amazing connection with nature that Luna possessed. "What happened to them?" Zara asked. The bear's mental voice grew sad. "Some were afraid. They left and never returned. Others tried to tell the world about this place. They were silenced or ignored. The memories of their discoveries were buried, just as this chamber was buried. But Luna is different," the cub's voice piped up in her mind. "She's not afraid, and she's too little for the grown-ups to silence." Luna babbled agreement and pointed around the chamber, then back toward the tunnel entrance. She was trying to tell them something important. The mother bear walked to another crystal and touched it with her nose. Immediately, the chamber filled with the sounds of the search teams above. They could hear helicopters, vehicles, and dozens of people combing through the forest. "Doctor, Winters, we know you're out here. You and your daughter could be in danger." Luna frowned at the sounds and shook her head firmly. She pointed at herself, then at the bears, then at the crystals, making it clear that this was where they belonged. But even as she did, Zara could hear more voices joining the search. The story was spreading. Soon there would be news crews, government investigators, maybe even military personnel. This peaceful sanctuary would be overrun with people who wouldn't understand its importance. "We can't hide here forever," Zara said sadly. "And I can't keep Luna away from the world. She needs to grow up, go to school, have a normal life." The bear cub left its mother's side and walked over to Luna, nuzzling her hand gently. When it looked up at her with those impossibly intelligent eyes, Luna started humming a new song, one that was full of sadness but also hope. "She says she understands," the mother bear translated. "But she also says this is not goodbye. The connection we share doesn't depend on being in the same place. As long as the crystals exist, as long as people like your daughter remember to listen, we will always be able to find each other." Luna nodded solemnly and reached into the pocket of her little jacket. She pulled out the small stuffed bear that she had been carrying since they left the facility. With careful deliberation, she placed it at the base of the largest crystal, where it began to glow with the same blue-green light as everything else in the chamber. "A promise," the bear cub said in Zara's mind, "a piece of her heart to stay with us and a piece of ours to go with her." The mother bear walked to another part of the chamber where the tunnel continued deeper into the mountain. She nuzzled her cub gently, then looked back at Zara and Luna one last time. This tunnel will take you to the other side of the mountain, far from the search teams. From there, you can find your way home safely. But remember, home is not just a place. It's wherever hearts understand each other. Luna waved goodbye to the bears, still humming softly. As they disappeared into the deeper tunnel, Zara thought she heard the cub's voice one more time. Thank you for teaching me that different kinds of families can help each other. Zara picked up Luna and headed toward the exit tunnel, her mind reeling with everything that had happened. Behind them, the crystal chamber continued to sing its ancient song, promising that some connections transcend the boundaries of species and understanding. As they walked toward the light at the far end of the tunnel, Luna fell asleep in her mother's arms, a peaceful smile on her tiny face. Even in sleep, she hummed softly, and Zara realized that her daughter's gift would continue to grow. The world above was waiting, full of people who would want explanations for what had happened at the research facility. But Zara knew now that the real story could never be explained in words alone. It would have to be lived, one small act of understanding at a time. High above them, the search teams were still calling their names, unaware that the people they were looking for had already found exactly where they belonged. The tunnel that led away from the crystal chamber was different from the entrance they had used. The walls here were smoother, almost polished, and etched with more of those strange symbols that reminded Zara so much of Luna's drawings. As they walked, Luna stirred in her arms, opening her eyes and immediately starting to babble excitedly. "What is it, sweetheart?" Zara whispered, but she was beginning to understand that Luna's babbling wasn't random. Every sound her daughter made seemed to have meaning now. Luna pointed ahead, where a soft light was beginning to filter through the darkness. But as they got closer, Zara realized this wasn't sunlight from an exit. It was the same blue-green glow as the crystals, but much fainter. The tunnel curved sharply, and when they rounded the bend, Zara found herself facing something that made her stop in her tracks once again. An elderly man was sitting on a natural stone ledge, his weathered hands resting on a walking stick carved from what looked like crystallized wood. He looked up as they approached, and his eyes, bright blue despite his age, focused immediately on Luna. "Ah," he said in a voice like rustling leaves. "The singing child. We've been waiting for you." "We?" Zara asked, instinctively holding Luna closer. The old man smiled and gestured further down the tunnel. "Come, Dr. Winters. There are others who need to meet your daughter." "How do you know my name?" Zara demanded. But Luna was already reaching toward the stranger, making her humming sounds. When the old man heard Luna's humming, his entire face transformed with wonder. "Listen to her, Doctor. Winters. She's telling you not to be afraid. She says I'm a friend." Against every instinct screaming at her to turn and run, Zara found herself following the old man deeper into the tunnel. Luna seemed completely at ease, chattering away in her mysterious language and occasionally clapping her hands. "My name is Thomas," the man said as they walked. "Professor Thomas Ashworth, though I suppose that title doesn't mean much down here. I've been living in these tunnels for, well, longer than most people remember I exist." "Living down here, but why and how?" Thomas chuckled. "The same reason you're down here, I suspect. I found something the world above wasn't ready to understand. Something that connected me to life in ways I never thought possible." They passed several side tunnels, and Zara could see more of the faint crystal glow coming from each one. But more surprisingly, she could hear voices, human voices, echoing softly from the depths. "There are others here," she realized. "Oh, yes," Thomas confirmed. "A small community of people who found this place over the years. Scientists, mostly like yourself. People who stumbled upon something extraordinary and chose to protect it rather than exploit it. Luna started wiggling in Zara's arms, wanting to be put down. When Zara hesitated, Thomas nodded encouragingly. "She's safe here, Doctor." Winters. Safer than anywhere else in the world, I'd venture to say. Zara sat Luna down carefully, and the baby immediately started crawling toward a larger side tunnel. As they followed her, Zara could hear more voices, and she began to detect something familiar in their tone. The same kind of wonder she had heard in her own voice when she spoke to the bears. The side tunnel opened into another chamber, smaller than the Crystal Cathedral, but no less remarkable. This one had been adapted for human habitation. Comfortable furniture made from wood and stone was arranged around small crystal formations that provided gentle lighting. People of various ages sat or worked quietly, and when Luna crawled into the room, every one of them looked up with the same expression of amazement. "She's so young," whispered a woman with silver hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "I've never seen anyone so young with the gift." "Gift?" Zara asked. A younger man, perhaps in his 30s, stood up from where he had been working with what looked like some kind of crystal instrument. The ability to communicate directly with living consciousness. Not just animals, plants, sometimes even the crystals themselves. Most of us didn't develop it until much later in life. Luna had crawled to the center of the room and was looking around with bright, curious eyes. She made a soft humming sound, and immediately every crystal in the chamber began to glow brighter. "Remarkable," breathed an elderly woman sitting near what appeared to be a small library of handwritten books. "She's amplifying the resonance without any training at all." "Who are you all?" Zara asked, feeling overwhelmed again. Thomas gestured for her to sit on a comfortable chair made from carved stone. "We are researchers who found ourselves researching something the world above considers impossible. Dr. Sarah Chen," he pointed to the silver-haired woman, "was a botanist who discovered that plants have complex communication networks. Marcus Webb," he indicated the younger man, "was an acoustic engineer who learned that consciousness creates its own sound frequencies." "And I," said the elderly woman with the books, "am Dr. Elena Vasquez. I was a psychologist who spent 30 years documenting cases of interspecies communication before giving up trying to convince my colleagues it was real." Zara looked around the chamber, taking in the peaceful faces of these people who had given up their lives above ground to protect and study something extraordinary. "How long have you all been down here?" "Time moves differently when you're listening to the heartbeat of the Earth herself," Sarah said with a gentle smile. "Some of us have been here for decades. Others, like Marcus, found their way down just a few years ago." Luna had crawled over to the library area and was reaching for one of the books. Elena carefully lifted a large volume and opened it to a page covered with drawings. Sketches of animals, plants, and human figures all connected by flowing lines. "These are maps," Elena explained. "Not of the tunnels, but of the connections between living things. Every person who comes here adds to our understanding." Luna looked at the drawings and started babbling excitedly, pointing first at the book and then at herself. "She wants to contribute," Marcus said, laughing. "Already. Most of us spent months just learning to listen properly." Thomas leaned forward in his chair. "Dr. Winters, your daughter is special even among those of us with the gift. She doesn't just communicate with other species. She translates. She makes connections that didn't exist before." "What do you mean?" "The bears who brought you here," Sarah explained. "They've been trying to reach humans for generations. But until Luna came along, the bridge was incomplete. She's the first human we've encountered who can facilitate communication between any living beings." Luna chose that moment to crawl over to a small crystal formation and place her hands on it. Immediately, the chamber filled with a gentle harmony of sounds, not just the crystal resonance, but something more complex. Zara could hear the whisper of air through the tunnels, the distant sound of underground water, even the faint pulse of roots growing through soil far above. "She's linking us to the entire ecosystem," Elena said, her voice filled with awe. "Through her, we can hear the forest breathing." Zara felt tears forming in her eyes. "This is all so incredible, but I don't understand what it means for Luna. What kind of life can she have? How can I raise her properly when she has abilities that most people would think are impossible?" The room fell quiet for a moment. Finally, Thomas spoke. "Doctor Winters, there's something else you need to know. The reason the government officials were at your facility today wasn't random. They've been tracking anomalous readings from underground in this area for months. They know something unusual is happening even if they don't understand what." Zara's blood ran cold. "You mean they'll keep looking? They'll find this place?" Marcus nodded grimly. "Eventually, yes. We've been preparing for that possibility. This sanctuary can't remain hidden forever. Then what happens to all of you? To this incredible place?" Elena stood up and walked to Luna, who was still harmonizing with the crystal. "That, Dr. Winters, depends largely on your daughter. She represents something new, a generation that could bridge the gap between the hidden world and the world above. But that will require making some very difficult choices." Luna looked up from the crystal and crawled back to Zara, pulling herself up onto her mother's lap. As she settled against Zara's chest, she started humming again. Not the complex harmonies she'd been creating, but a simple, comforting melody that reminded Zara of lullabies. "She's telling you that everything will be all right," Sarah translated. "But she's also asking you to trust her to choose her own path." Zara looked down at her daughter, this tiny, precious being who seemed to understand the world in ways that ancient wisdom keepers had spent lifetimes learning to barely glimpse. "I'm just her mother," Zara said softly. "How can I possibly make decisions about things this important?" "Perhaps," Thomas suggested gently, "the decision isn't yours to make alone. Perhaps it's time to listen to what Luna herself wants." As if she had been waiting for this invitation, Luna looked directly into her mother's eyes and began to communicate. Not through humming this time, but through that strange, direct connection Zara had felt before. Images and emotions flowed between them. Luna was showing her two possible futures, one where they returned to their old life, pretending none of this had happened, keeping Luna's abilities secret and suppressed, and another where they became part of something larger, helping to bridge two worlds that had been separated for too long. But there was a third option too, one that Luna seemed to be creating as she shared it with her mother. A future where they lived between both worlds, helping people above ground understand what lay beneath, while protecting the sanctuary and its inhabitants. She wants to be an ambassador, Zara realized, speaking her thoughts out loud. She wants to help others discover what we've discovered. The people in the chamber exchanged glances that held years of hope and fear. "It's dangerous," Marcus warned. "The world above doesn't always react well to things it can't explain or control." "But maybe," Elena said quietly, "it's time for that to change. Maybe the world is ready for a child who can speak the language of life itself." Luna climbed down from Zara's lap and walked, taking her first independent steps right there in that underground chamber, to each person in the room. She placed her small hands on each of them in turn, and as she did, Zara could see their faces light up with joy and wonder. "She's giving us hope," Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. She's promising that the connections we've found here don't have to stay hidden forever. But even as this beautiful moment unfolded, the sound of distant explosions echoed through the tunnels. The government search teams had found the tunnel entrance and were using some kind of equipment to break through barriers deeper underground. "They're coming," Thomas said, standing up urgently. "We need to decide. Do we hide, or do we trust in Luna's vision of a different future?" Luna looked up at all the adults around her and began to hum the most complex melody any of them had ever heard. Through the sound, Zara felt a message of determination and hope that seemed far too mature for a baby who had only just taken her first steps. The crystal formations throughout the chamber began to pulse in rhythm with Luna's song, and suddenly Zara understood. Her daughter wasn't just proposing to be an ambassador between worlds, she was already becoming one. The explosions were getting closer, but instead of fear, Zara felt a growing sense of anticipation. Whatever happened next, she and Luna would face it together, along with the most remarkable group of people she had ever met. Luna's plan was about to begin. As the explosions grew closer, Luna stood in the center of the chamber and began to hum with more power than Zara had ever heard from her tiny daughter. The crystals responded immediately, their glow intensifying until the entire chamber was bathed in brilliant blue-green light. But something else was happening too. Through the tunnels they could hear sounds that defied explanation, the thundering of many paws, the flutter of countless wings, and deep, resonant calls that seemed to come from the very earth itself. "The animals," Sarah whispered in awe. "She's calling them all." Marcus ran to a crystal formation that seemed to serve as some kind of monitoring device. His eyes widened as he looked into its depths. Not just the local wildlife, everything, every creature within miles is heading this way. Zara felt a moment of panic. "Luna, what are you doing? They'll hurt the animals." But Luna looked at her mother with those impossibly wise eyes and sent a feeling of absolute certainty through their connection. "Trust me, Mama, this is how it has to be." The explosions stopped suddenly. In the silence that followed, they could hear human voices filled with confusion and wonder. "Sir, we have a situation here." "What kind of situation, soldier?" "There are animals everywhere, sir, hundreds of them, bears, deer, wolves, birds. They're all just standing around the tunnel entrance. Not attacking, just waiting." Through the crystal monitoring system, Marcus was able to show them what was happening above ground. The tactical teams had emerged from the forest to find themselves surrounded by what appeared to be every animal in the region. They stood in perfect circles around the tunnel entrance, completely calm, but unmistakably protective. "My God," Elena breathed. "She's created a peaceful blockade." But Luna wasn't finished. She crawled over to the largest crystal in the chamber and placed both hands on its surface. Immediately, her humming changed pitch, and something extraordinary began to happen throughout the tunnel system. Every crystal began to glow brighter, and the glow started to spread upward through cracks and crevices in the rock, emerging above ground as streams of gentle light that illuminated the entire area. "What is she doing now?" Zara asked, watching her daughter with a mixture of pride and worry. "She's revealing everything," Thomas said, his voice filled with emotions Zara couldn't identify. "She's making it impossible for them to pretend this doesn't exist." Above ground, they could hear more voices. News crews who had arrived to cover the incident at the research facility, government officials, local authorities. All of them were seeing the lights, the animals, and a phenomenon that couldn't be explained or covered up. Then Luna did something that brought tears to every eye in the chamber. She began to sing. Not hum, but actually sing, in a clear, beautiful voice that no 8-month-old should have been able to produce. The song had no words, but everyone who heard it understood its meaning perfectly. Through the crystals, through the connected consciousness of every living thing in the area, Luna's song told a story. It was the story of connection, of understanding, of a world where different kinds of beings could communicate and care for each other. It was the story of the bears who had brought them here, of the underground community that had protected this sacred place, and of a baby who could bridge worlds. Above ground, something unprecedented happened. The military personnel lowered their weapons. The news crews stopped filming and simply listened. Even the government officials stood in silent wonder as Luna's song washed over them. She's not just singing to us, Sarah realized. She's singing to everyone. Every person up there is hearing this directly in their hearts. Through their connection, Zara felt what Luna was doing. Her daughter was sharing the experience they had just lived. The terror of the bears, the joy of communication, the beauty of understanding. She was making everyone feel what it was like to truly connect with another living being. When Luna's song finally ended, the silence that followed was broken by something none of them expected. The sound of the mother bear's voice, somehow amplified so that everyone could hear it. "Thank you, little singer, for helping my child. Thank you for showing them that love is the same in every language." The cub's voice followed, higher and more playful. "Are we all friends now? Can we play together?" Above ground, the sound of a grown man weeping could be heard clearly. One of the government officials was on his knees, staring at the tunnel entrance with tears streaming down his face. "I heard them," he said in a wondering voice. "I actually heard them speak." What happened next would be talked about for generations. The tactical team stood down. The news crews began filming again, but now they were documenting something beautiful instead of something threatening. People started coming out of the forest. Researchers, local residents, curious onlookers, all drawn by Luna's song. Thomas stood up and looked at the others. "It's time," he said simply. One by one, the members of the underground community began walking toward the tunnel entrance. Luna, still glowing with crystal light, crawled after them, with Zara following close behind. When they emerged from the tunnel, they found themselves in the middle of the most extraordinary gathering any of them had ever seen. Hundreds of people stood in respectful silence, surrounded by calm animals of every species. The mother bear and her cub sat near the tunnel entrance, as if they were hosting a welcoming party. Luna looked around at all the faces, human and animal, and clapped her hands with delight. She had done exactly what she set out to do. She had brought two worlds together. Dr. Sarah Chen was the first to speak, addressing the crowd in a calm, clear voice. "My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I'd like to tell you about a discovery that will change how we understand our relationship with all living things." As she began to speak, other members of the community stepped forward to share their knowledge. Marcus demonstrated his acoustic instruments. Elena showed her communication maps. Thomas told the story of how the sanctuary had protected the ancient wisdom for so many years. But it was Luna who remained the center of attention. Sitting in her mother's arms, she continued to hum softly, and every time she did, the connections between all the beings present seemed to grow stronger. The bear cub tottered over to where they stood and looked up at Luna with adoring eyes. In the hearing of everyone present, the cub said, "Thank you for being my friend. Will you visit us sometimes?" Luna babbled a response that everyone somehow understood. "Always. We're family now." As the sun began to set, plans were already being made. The research facility would be converted into a new kind of institution, one dedicated to understanding and facilitating communication between species. The underground chambers would be protected and studied, but also shared with the world in a way that honored their sacred nature. Most importantly, Luna would grow up as the first of a new generation. Children raised to understand that consciousness exists in many forms, and that love and understanding can transcend any boundary. Years later, when Luna was old enough to tell her own story, she would describe that day as the day the world remembered how to listen with its heart. The research center became known as the Luna Institute, and it drew visitors from around the globe who came to learn the art of interspecies communication. The bear family never left the area. They became unofficial ambassadors for their species, helping humans understand the complex emotional lives of wildlife. The cub, who was given the name Hope by the children who visited the institute, grew up playing with human children and became living proof that friendship has no boundaries. As for Zara, she discovered that being the mother of someone extraordinary meant learning to see the world through entirely new eyes. She gave up her old research to help establish the communication protocols that would revolutionize humanity's relationship with nature. And every evening, as Luna grew from a miraculous baby into a remarkable child, she would stand at the window of their new home, overlooking the sanctuary, and hum her gentle songs. The crystals would glow in response. The animals would gather to listen, and the world would remember, once again, that the most important language is the language of the heart. The day that began with a baby's concern for a frightened bear cub ended with the dawn of a new era, one where the impossible became possible, and where a child's love changed the world forever. In the end, Luna had not just saved the bears, she had saved the connection between all living things, proving that sometimes the smallest voice can speak the loudest truth. We are all one family, sharing one beautiful world.